Welcome to a meeting of the minds, crafted from decades of talk show experience, an extension of the magic they've created together on radio in the phenomenon called M&M. Hot topics in the news and wisdom from life. It's Mark Davis and Mike Gallagher. This is M&M Extra.
And will you look at us? We made it to the end of another week. We made it to the end of our second week of this adventure. I'm the M that is Mark. He's the M that is Mike. It's M&M Extra. Happy Friday. Happy weekend. How you doing?
Been a week. It's been a whole long week here in South Carolina. I was in South Carolina yesterday earlier, and I'm kind of just spent because I'm tired of all the redistricting drama. So,
well, I have a palate cleanser. I'm going to begin. It is in fact three topics in one.
Okay.
That all relate to one thing, and so three topics in one.
Yes.
And being a weekend, it will resonate with a lot of people heading into the weekend because the common thread through all three of these things, I'm going to billboard them, bam, 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 thumbnail them, and then we'll go down a little avenue with each of them. And they are the very, very fine and weekend appropriate subject of drinking. That's right, drinking on M&M Extra. Here's what I mean. You on your show yesterday, and this is funny, everybody, through the lens, this is something Mike generally does not do, and something I make up for it for because I do. In moderation, I'll drink enough for both of us. Kidding. But you were not kidding. You were very serious in talking about Trump in China. This kind of resonated with me, but in hearing you talk about it, it really meant a lot because Trump was a complete teetotaler. He saw his brother have a life destroyed because of that. Trump has just said, I just don't drink. But out of deference to his hosts in a toast, he did, and that struck you as very meaningful. I want to dig into that with you for a second. We also had Rand Paul's drunken son, went after Congressman Mike Lawler, and we got into a little bit of a round table of when somebody gets drunk, does something terrible, and then seeks to mitigate the damage by going, I got a drinking problem. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. And third, a survey taken, did you see this? They asked, I guess they're asking 18-year-olds, have you ever consumed alcohol? 50 years ago, 92% said yes. 92%, and the other 8 were lying. 92% said yes, and now it's less than half. So as soon as everybody goes, oh, that's great, less teen drinking, some people came in and said, is it so great? And I might have been one of those people. So there's 3 good, solid drinking subjects. Give me 60 seconds, if you will, because you phrased it so beautifully, the moment when Trump rose to make the toast and what you saw that really, really hit you in the heart.
Well, first of all, this is the M&M Extra podcast, so we don't have to do the give me 60 seconds Mark Davis rule anymore.
or do 10 minutes.
That's on the radio show.
I'll go grab a beer while you talk.
Remember, time constraints are out the window.
I know.
So no, that's a great expression you use a lot. Give me 60 seconds. Over the years, I've become very fond of the Mark Davis colloquialisms, and that's one of them. Let the game come to us. I love that one. You could put a whole book together of Mark Davis 101s. But, you are right that all 3 of those tie together in a very interesting way because, in fact, I'll start with number 2 and tie it to number 1. The reason I wanted to exhibit some grace over Rand Paul's drunken son, and the story is that Rand Paul's son, who's, I guess, in his 20s, came across Congressman Mike Lawler in a bar somewhere. And Mike Lawler, of course, is a New York Republican congressman, and they got into it, and the young man was drunk and started blaming. He said, "You people are the reason we're in Iran," and Lawler's like, "What do you mean, you people?" And the Jews, and Lawler said, "I'm not even Jewish." And then the guy said, "Well, I apologize that you're not a Jew. I thought you were a Jew." So it was a drunken tirade. What sort of impacted me was his apology. He took to social media and he essentially said, I was drunk. The words that were said do not reflect who I am, and I'm seeking help for my drinking problem. Now, a lot of people roll their eyes at that, but I'm going to tell you, as somebody who has had people in my life who have been ravaged by alcoholism, I've got a soft spot in my heart for somebody who possibly is able to say, I got a problem here. Look at me.
100%.
I've embarrassed my family. I've embarrassed my dad. I've embarrassed myself. I was shameful in what I said to this guy, and I've got a big problem on my hands. And so, and it goes to number one. And I don't say this very often. In fact, I think yesterday when I said it on air, it's the first time that I've ever publicly admitted to why I'm a teetotaler. And I am a teetotaler. That doesn't mean, if out of respect, if somebody's going to have a sip of champagne or a glass of wine, I'll take a sip of wine so as not to be rude to the host. First of all, I don't really like the taste of alcohol and what it does to me. But more importantly, I'm kind of like President Trump. I've seen what damage alcohol abuse can do. And I don't drink for that reason. You know, I've got a big problem with consumption. I overindulge.
If you like something, you like something.
I like a Broadway show, I'll go 77 times. If I like massage therapy, I go every day. I like Diet Cokes, I'll drink 12 a day. And I mean it. So I could go very easily down a path of addiction. There's no doubt in my mind. And thank God I've managed to avoid that my whole life. And I think it's largely because I stay away from drugs and alcohol at all times. It scares me because I've seen what horrible devastation it can do if it's abused. Now, that doesn't mean a moderate drinker or somebody who's responsible. Obviously, I don't. But and so when Trump did that, that's why, and I'm glad you caught me saying that.
I did. I was moved hearing you talk about it.
Yeah, because it was a sign of respect on his part, because for him, not unlike me, it's a philosophical commitment that he's making to not drink. He's doing that probably to honor his brother, and I'm doing it to honor the loved ones in my life who've had so many problems with it.
And it's funny because I know there are people, and you and I probably both do this, and sometimes we're right and sometimes we're not. I can sense that there are people listening, watching right now, thinking something, so I'm going to channel it and address it. And that is people saying, Mike, good speech, understand you don't want to become an alcoholic. Maybe you've got a little bit of a very, not an addictive personality, but a tendency to really go all in. If you,
I've got an addictive personality.
But it's not that you could probably be an okay social drinker. Give it a try, blah, blah, blah. And the reason you don't, it's funny, you mentioned my catchphrases and my whatevers they are. There's one that I deploy a lot called reduce to zero. You're making a decision that maybe you could. I mean, I don't know, maybe you could, but you've made a decision to reduce to zero the possibility of you having a drinking problem. And the way to do that is to simply leave it alone completely. Because if you thought one day, I could have a beer after work, or, I could knock down a bottle of wine with a bunch of friends, and then maybe something does go wrong. By reducing to zero, you have taken ultimate control over this and made a decision that cannot be thwarted. And I think that is to be admired.
Well, the other expression over the years I've heard is remove the objection. Get the objection out of the way, or get the obstacle out of the way. And that's what I've always wanted to do, and I have, and I make a commitment. And incidentally, there's a lot of cultural pressure to drink. I've often been in kind of uncomfortable situations, particularly with work dinners and gatherings where people are drinking and they got a bottle of wine out, or they're pouring bourbon or whatever. I had a guy a few weeks ago wanted me to be a guest on a podcast. Yeah. And it's a friend of a friend, and there was a good reason that I wanted to do it in terms of my business relationships. I said, well, sure, I can do it. He said, great. He goes, first of all, he said, and I need you to give me like 2 to 3 hours of commitment to do my podcast. I fell off the chair. I wouldn't do 2 to 3 hours with anybody.
With you.
You tell me about it.
I love you.
I love you. I don't love you that much. 2 to 3 hours. 2 to 3 hours. So I very diplomatically said, well, I can give you 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. Not to be a jerk here, but 2 to 3 hours, give me a break. He goes, okay, I can make that work. Now we're doing this back and forth exchange. And he says, now the premise of my podcast is that I'm going to have you drink whiskey on the podcast.
No. What is that? What?
I know. Tell me I'm reading these emails like I'm having a stroke.
Have him call me.
Yeah. Kidding, I got the guy for you, buddy. Have I got a guest? You want a pot? Mark Davis.
Suddenly the 2 hours sounds pretty good. I might be in.
I'm having a great time of my life. No, And honestly, he said the goal of the podcast is to loosen you up over the time of the podcast by drinking whiskey while you're telling me about your favorite whiskeys. And I thought, and I wrote him back. I said, "Well, look,
unless we don't have any, so
right? Unless we could do a taste test between Diet Pepsi and Diet Coke, I'm in trouble. I can't do this." So I said, and I was trying to be diplomatic, and the guy was an important guy, and I said, frankly, I don't drink, and I don't mean. Never heard from him again. That was it. No more.
You know what this sounds like, and I don't know. Are you a consumer of Club Random with Bill Maher?
Oh yeah, sure. But
which is great.
They
It's
smoke pot,
smart.
right?
Well, if you don't smoke a joint, you're gone. And I'm totally kidding about that too. He's very magnanimous. You can do it, but they're drinking, they're smoking, and it's funny. Usually, and I guess Bill Maher's been at this for enough decades that he's able to still remain coherent. He says, "I never." Ever twist up before real time on HBO. But here in the more relaxed atmosphere of the podcast, something you and I now know something about, I may knock down a doob every once in a while. So his guest a few weeks ago, I don't know, was Woody Harrelson. Don't get ahead of me. Well, precisely. And they have a pot store together. They're in business together with a pot store.
Oh, you're kidding me. They co-own a marijuana store? A dispensary?
So 10 minutes in, Mike, and go everybody, listen, we'll send people to other podcasts all the time.
Sure.
Maybe they'll send people to us. Club Random, Bill Maher, Woody Harrelson, 10, 15 minutes in, they are just laughing like idiots, stumbling over each other. It was not good, except it kind of was. So it was crazy. So
incidentally, can I say something quick about Bill Maher?
Sure.
I have got a confession to make. I shouldn't love the guy. I know that he despises people, or not people,
No.
but he doesn't recognize organized religion. He's very anti-organized religion. I remember many years ago, I used to despise what he said about the 9/11 and the hijackers, and how and kind of made it American soldiers out to be cowards or the American military because we lob bombs by missiles and all that. And he lost his job on ABC because of that.
Politically incorrect.
That's
on
right.
A show called Politically Incorrect.
He was fired for being politically incorrect, right? But now fast forward to 2026. Mark, I'm telling you, I love what this guy says. Every
the highest compliment I can give, because there are people I like, people I admire, and not that I need to, go shoehorn myself onto that podcast. I'd probably, stay clean for that one. I'd love to hang out with him for a couple hours because he is, number one, the old school liberal we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Who's left of center but not crazy. He is Trump appreciative for Iran, for being up against jihadism, being anti-woke, et cetera, et cetera. Even on issues of religion and politics and everything, is completely tolerant of an opposing view and enjoys talking about those opposing views. He is everything we say we want from our supposed political opponents. I'm a big fan of his. I really am.
He checks every one of those boxes, and when I hear his monologues or when I hear the way he presents an issue. Now, look, we don't agree with him on everything. Obviously, he's got deep criticisms of President Trump, and I kind of hate. I loved it when he was invited to the White House. Didn't he have dinner with the president?
Sure did. It was a great visit.
And walked away kind of impressed, and he said so. He said, because we've experienced that. I've gotten to experience that in being with President Trump one-on-one. He is a dynamite personality to hang out with. He's very engaging. He's funny. He's warm. He's inquisitive. He's everything you don't think he is from seeing him, make fun of Rosie O'Donnell or whatever. There's something very special about. And Bill Maher said that. But then they I thought they kind of were getting along, and then all of a sudden now they're back at each other's throats again.
Well, you know whose fault that is, and let's stipulate that we love him. It's Trump. He said, yeah, Bill Maher was over. It was kind of crazy. He immediately wanted a drink. He had to have a drink like right off the bat. He was nervous around me. I mean, and it was almost like people got a hold of Trump and said, you're being way too nice to Bill Maher. You need to get catty about him again. I don't.
Maybe so, I guess. I mean, look, this is that gene that we think, or that compassion gene that President Trump lacks, whether he's mocking Rob Reiner days after he was murdered, or saying, I'm glad Robert Mueller is dead. My Lord, I mean, but that's just him. He's got this abrasive, sort of sharp-elbowed approach to his critics. Now, look, if you're supporting a supporter of his, he loves you. I remember the first time I went to the White House, and I was in a small group, and he looked over at me, and he kind of winked and smiled and gave me a thumbs up. And then one of the aides came over afterwards and said, President Trump loves how you defend him on Fox News, and he's seen you on TV and radio. If you're with him, he's with you. If you're not with him,
loyalty.
Yeah, you're not, though. Pack your bags.
Absolutely. Okay, Rand Paul's drunk son, because you had some very deep and important things to say about that, and you touched on them a minute ago, and I want to go a little bit deeper. So he's in a bar. He goes up to Congressman Mike Lawler, says, because you Jews were, and he said, I'm not Jewish. I went, oops. So, and you properly described the grace we should show and the strong moral and psychological rationale that you have for being so open to anybody who says, I have a drinking problem. I am too. There is a cynicism in me born of seeing way too many liars and way too many weasels that knows and recognizes that of 100 people who have done something terrible while drunk, if all 100 of them say, ooh, this is horrible, I'm so sorry, I'm going to go get help for my drinking problem, some percentage of them are totally lying. Well, the problem they have is, in this particular case, maybe young Mr. Paul has a Jew-hating problem, doesn't really have a drinking problem except that night, and what it did is reveal his deep-seated anti-Semitism, and this was nothing but a gutless CYA.
Well,
I consider that I would never say that. I don't know it, but I can't dismiss the possibility.
I get it. I mean, to me, it strikes to the core of the issue of the power of an apology and the nature of an apology. We often wonder when somebody apologizes, are you apologizing because you got caught? Or are you apologizing because you're truly sorry? I'll never forget the apology that I had to issue and I wanted to issue over something that was deeply personal to me because my big mouth got me in trouble. Years ago, I used to do a weekly hit on my radio show with Chris Wallace from Fox News. And by the way, thank the Lord, that was before the Trump era because Chris went all anti-Trump, and that would have been brutal to have him on the show every Friday. But honestly, not unlike the dynamic you and I have together with being on your show every day at 7:35 and now doing the M&M Extra podcast, Chris and I had the same kind of chemistry. We had fun together, and it was a side of Chris Wallace that people didn't usually see. He kind of let his hair down, and he would poke fun at me, and he always made fun of my weight. He always teased me about being heavy. In fact, he joked about he saw somewhere that I was on the Talkers Magazine Heavy 100 list. And he said,
Whoops.
Yeah, I'll bet you were. I'll bet you were on the Heavy 100. Oh, yeah, that's what he did to me all the time. So one day, and that was the day, one day we were talking about that, and that came up, the Heavy 100 list. And I don't know why the heck I thought to say this, and I'll regret it to my dying day. But I said, well, speaking of heavy, did you see Kelly Clarkson last night on TV? And she had some big TV appearance she'd come back after having a baby or whatever, and she was on, I think, American Idol or whatever show she was on, and she was very heavy. She was huge. I mean, she put on a ton of weight, and of course she had a baby, and women have weight issues and everything. Like a dummy, So he made a crack about, I had said earlier that I had ordered a Domino's pizza the night before. I said, but the good news is, yes, I did eat the whole pizza, but I ordered thin crust, so it wasn't so fattening for me. Well, he said, when I said, did you see Kelly Clarkson? Then he made the comment, yeah, maybe she should have stuck to the thin crust instead of the thick crust. Well, Joe Concha, and I'll never forgive this guy, Joe Concha used to write for Mediaite. Joe Concha is one of these guys. And I'm sure he's a nice man, but he's everywhere. He's on Fox News, and Sean Hannity's always trying to prop him up. You need to have your own show, and like, give him his own show, for crying out loud. He's on the Weekend Show, and he wrote for Mediaite, and then he writes over for the New York Post. He's one of those guys that bounces around, and God bless him, but he's ubiquitous. Well, he was writing for Mediaite. And he must have been listening that day, and he writes a column how Mike Gallagher and Chris Wallace fat-shamed Kelly Clarkson on Mike Gallagher's show. Us two guys, and he really was critical of both of us, which is so ironic considering, they're supposed to be this, conservative, common sense guy, and called us out and said we were fat shamers. Well, his column at Mediaite went thoroughly through the roof viral. Before you know it, I'm getting calls from People Magazine, TMZ, Perez Hilton. Everybody is covering the way I fat shamed, along with Chris Wallace, Kelly Clarkson. Now, the reason it devastated me is because I knew, considering the mountain of coverage it got, that it was going to get back to her.
Of course.
And the thought that my words could hurt this beautiful, extraordinarily talented young woman,
good person, salt of the earth person.
It just gutted me, and it just killed me because, I was on the couch just the whole weekend. I'll never forget. It was a Friday that this all hit the fan, and I called, and it turned, and a little behind the curtain stuff here. Chris and I at the time shared the same agent, and I called our mutual agent and said, I got to apologize. I said, and Chris didn't want to apologize. He said, Mike, if you apologize, it'll open the floodgates. And I said, I don't think it opens the floodgates. I think it acknowledges that we shouldn't have said what we said. And you can debate, and you could debate the merits of what we said. I mean, all I literally said was, wow, she got big. That was literally my quote. And his quote was, well, maybe she should have gotten the thin crust or whatever. That was it. We didn't call her fatty or go into this whole thing.
10 minutes on it.
No, it was a throwaway, and that stupid Joe Concha decided to write a column out of it. And so I said, I got to apologize. And there was a lot of pushback. Finally, I said, sorry, I'm doing it. And I got out my laptop and I wrote an apology that, again, wasn't because I got caught. It was because it got back to her, and I knew it, and I just hated the thought that any of my words could have hurt her. Now, people told us, look, she's gotten way worse criticism, and she laughed it off, and she's had a very successful career, and she's done just fine, and she's took the weight off after the baby and all that. But the point of that is, here was the lesson I learned. I was getting hate mail from Switzerland. I mean, I was getting bombarded. Oh, Mark, you should have seen it. It was awful. I mean, I couldn't believe I've never had that kind of literally worldwide scrutiny in my life.
And when exactly was this? How many years ago?
I blocked it out. Lord all knows. Okay. I don't know how many.
It's a good bit. Easy,
over a decade. Maybe 15 years ago. I don't remember when it was. But I will tell you that I put a statement together, and I wrote it, and they were mad at me and all. And by the way, Chris wound up apologizing too. I think much to his chagrin. And P.S., weeks or months after that, they pulled the plug on the Chris and Mike segment. Never again was Chris going to come on my show.
Do you think that was why?
It was because of that. Of course it was. And it was actually stated to me that the executives at Fox thought that I got him in trouble and they didn't want to put him on my show anymore. Please. And I didn't get him in trouble. But anyway, but here's the point. I wrote this statement out. Look, and I even said, for a fatty like me, or for a tubby guy like me, to cast any aspersions on any man, woman, or child's physical appearance is ridiculous. I am so ashamed. I'm so sorry. I didn't do one of those qualified apologies, like if you were offended. I said, I am sorry.
Yep.
I am
sorry.
That's
the way to do it.
Well, you know what happened? You know what happened to all the criticism I was getting? It stopped immediately. It was like a spigot got turned off. It's like people were like, oh, wow, okay, the guy apologized and he owned it. And it was the right thing to do. And incidentally, the consequence was that it didn't, not contrary to Chris's worries, it didn't open the floodgates. It closed the floodgates. It stopped it. So there is a lesson there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, there
that,
you go.
that is simply superb. Okay, Drinkin' Friday continues, Chapter 3. Survey, which suddenly became Eating Friday. It's Consumption Friday. So here is the survey. Dennis Prager, God bless our friend Dennis Prager.
God bless Dennis.
You know what? who is able to talk and does posts on his Facebook, and people thought he was either going to die or never talk again, and he is.
And by the way, for the benefit for people who don't know, let me just quickly interject. People are not quite aware necessarily of his condition, but Dennis, of course, suffered a fall in his home in California in November of 2024. 25?
No, 5. He's just been. Yeah, almost a year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, almost a year. Well, and is now. I think it's public. He's a quadriplegic. So I think that's the right term. He's paralyzed from the chest down. But like you back to, I didn't want to interrupt you, but back to you. He's writing. He's talking. He's living life still. So go ahead.
It is so great and so inspiring, and it's not the kind of thing where you have like stamina for a 3-hour talk show, but you can sure do some Facebook and you can sure do some segments. And God bless Dennis. He wrote I think an entire book called Think a Second Time. The premise was, if something just occurs to you in a reaction, okay, give it a minute, let it marinate, and then put it under the microscope a little further. So here's an exercise in that. Survey was, hey, you're 18. Have you ever had any alcohol? 50 years ago, 92% said, yeah. Probably said, hell yeah. Now, less than 50%. So the first blush thought, it is what everybody did on social media, was like, great. Less drinking among the kids. That's good. I had two contrarian thoughts about that. Number one, they're probably too stoned to find the liquor store, and I don't mean to be too glib about that. So it's not that they are free of intoxicants, it's just that they're finding different ones. But here was the other one, and in view of what you've just shared about the personal choices that you've made, I am particularly interested in your thought about this. People said, okay, the reason the kids are not drinking so much anymore is because they've traded one unhealthy thing for another. That what kids used to do is they used to leave the house. They used to interact with friends. They used to have hobbies. They used to drive. They used to have social moments that enabled them to rise and fall and date and be accepted and rejected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it made them strong and it made them mature. And it was on balance a good thing. Today's kids, you may have more than half of them have never touched a drop of alcohol. They've also never seen an ounce of sunlight. They've never left the sickly glow of screens. So I literally asked folks on the show this week, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a mentally healthy, functional, socially mature, interacting with a kid who might have had a couple of beers in their senior year, or a teetotaling kid who can't even achieve eye contact because all he do is spend time in a Twitch stream?
Yeah, I don't buy that. It's not a binary choice. Why is it binary? It doesn't have to be binary. My answer would be, I think today's young generation is healthier than they used to be. I think kids are mindful about the effects of alcohol, cigarettes. I think kids live at the gym. Teenagers, are going 5 days a week to the gym. They're doing all kinds of protein shakes, and they're just living a healthier lifestyle physically than kids 50 years ago. It's a whole different ball game now. Now kids are very self-conscious about their diet and their exercise regimen and all of that. So that probably
pause. Pause. Yes, but I mean, maybe they're eating kale, instead of the Doritos that were a staple for me. But again, we are just neck deep in stereotype, and every generation is a panoply of all kinds of different shapes and sizes. And what you've described absolutely exists. You really think physically healthier? I just think of them wasting away in the sickly glow of Minecraft. And that they're not getting out, and they're not exercising, and they're not, and physical health is one thing. Emotionally healthy, hell no.
Oh,
this generation is crippled. But anyway, that's another.
But you are so right about the obsession, the social media poison, and the all of that crap. I mean, there's no doubt about that. No, but I again, and look, you're probably closer to a younger age group than I am with your kids and your family and all that. My kids are all grown and gone, and I don't have a lot of interaction with younger kids now anymore. So maybe I'm out of touch, but but just based on the way I engage with material that talks about what kids are doing, I think they're just healthier than they used to be. But look, that could be dead wrong. I don't know.
But you also made a superb point, and that is, I'm sitting there saying, which would you rather have? Either this over here, where the kid might have had a beer, but he's really, really socially healthy, or this kid that does nothing but play Minecraft. In the middle there is, dare we dream, the possibility of a kid who is socially active, functional in 3 dimensions, and who also chooses not to drink. So
also a kid who's spiritual. This is why the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie, was so profoundly destructive for our country, because I know he was bringing a whole lot of young people to God. He was bringing a whole lot of people to the Lord. One of the things that Charlie, when you look back at his life and his legacy, all the appearances I did with him over the years and the time I spent and the things I watched him do on social media or on the internet, he never appeared publicly without professing his love for Jesus Christ, our Savior. He never did an appearance without citing the Bible. I mean, that kid could cite Scripture better than any Baptist preacher on a Sunday morning. He knew how to do it. He knew his Bible. He was such a strong young man of faith that he and Erica literally observed the Sabbath in this way. They on Saturdays, when Jews would observe the Sabbath, he turned the phone off. It was powered down, no interaction, no electronic communication for the entire literal definition of the Sabbath. That's how strong his faith was, and he just in losing him, I fear we've lost a lot of young people to the clutches of progressivism, where if they would have just been able to have continued to, gosh, it still breaks my heart. I still can't believe he's gone.
And I'm still going to stick with, and it's kind of funny, we're coming up on the 25th anniversary of 9/11, but the day before that will be the first anniversary of the loss of Charlie Kirk, and I will still believe that this doesn't have to be binary either or. But I believe that the message of Jesus that Charlie brought might have terrified more people than the conservatism he brought. There are a lot of people bringing conservatism. He was one of the most effective purveyors of the gospel, and it riled up the devil in a lot of people.
I agree.
Let me, in remaining minutes, it's kind of, and the greatest compliment, I got nothing on the clock. I have no idea. There's a show I'm watching we have a lot of common themes so far in these opening weeks of M&M Extra. There's some things that we've tended to pop back onto, and there is a show that Lisa and I just love. And on 2 successive episodes, there were 2 things that have been a huge deal for you and me. One of them is AI. The show is Hacks with the wonderful Gene Smart.
Right.
And Hannah Einbinder, who is Lorraine Newman's daughter. Remember her from SNL, from the original SNL cast? You bet. And she is an aging comedian, but still trying to stay relevant. She's enormously rich and lives in Vegas, but her struggles to remain relevant in the business, etc. It's called Hacks. I think it's HBO. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this year, I guess we're in whatever season we're in. Deborah receives Gene Smart receives an overture from a tech billionaire to do. She's been banned from performing for something. She took a stance on her number 1 ranked late night talk show, stuck up for somebody, got fired, blah blah blah. So she can't make any income. So here was a chance for her to make some money by being a part of a comedy AI, I think they called it Quick Scribble, where it was like, Deborah, we want to take your sense of humor and kind of download every bit you've ever done, every routine you've ever done, and load it into the AI, and then make it available to people who want to be a little bit funnier in their wedding toast, a little bit more clever in their speaking engagement that they're doing at the local Kiwanis Club. Follow me so far?
I do.
And she thought, wow, okay. All right, this is kind of cool. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, is there a downside to this? And Ava, her writer friend, Hannah Einbinder, revolted against this and said, no, this is not good. This is absolutely not good. First of all, it leaves your world. It leaves your control. You never know. Are we going to make somebody funny at the Skinheads convention or something like that?
Right.
And then, so there's level number 1 of relevance of what we were talking about. Level number 2 is he told her, she was about to make the deal with him, and he said, Deborah, you're just going to love this, and you're really going to love it when you use it for your own material. And she said, I'm never gonna do that. I'm a performer. I'm a writer. I'm a creator.
Right.
I said, no, you're totally gonna do it. Everybody is. You say you won't, but you totally will. And she said, no, you don't understand. But for comedy, for art, for anything, it's something that can do something, even if it's admittedly does it well. It removes the experience of trying and failing and learning, and failing again and learning, and trying and failing and learning.
And it's not her.
Ultimate,
And it isn't
it's
her.
also not her. Exactly right. So she ultimately tears up the entire deal, and I thought it was a magnificent lesson in the whole AI thing. The other part I could tell in 30 seconds. In the episode before that, Ava gets hit by a driverless cab.
I love a Waymo. That's
she's
hysterical.
walking along. She's on her phone, crossing a street in Vegas, and, boom, and a white car hits her, and she goes, "You." She gets ready to give the driver the old what for. I
Nobody in
turned
the
to Lisa
car.
and said, "Driverless."
That's funny.
And it totally is. It goes.
Well,
and just
first
drives
of all,
off.
let me officially thank you for ruining one of my favorite series, Hacks, because I haven't gotten up to those episodes yet. So you just blew it for me.
No
so now
spoilers. It's okay. It was just
spoiler
a little
alert.
subplot,
And let me do a preview of tonight. Dutton Ranch apparently is coming, and that's going to be Beth Dutton. Everybody needs Beth Dutton in their life. I love her. Rip and Beth are back, and Daily
Cole
Beast,
Hauser and Kelly Riley. My gosh, so good.
And that miserable publication, Daily Beast, even loves it. So that's saying something. They say
And you know who else is in that thing? Ed Harris and Annette Bening.
I know.
Whoa.
I can't wait.
And this is the Taylor Sheridan universe, which is Yellowstone.
There you go.
The greatness of Tulsa King. The 1883, the 1923, just everything this guy does.
So that's
really,
what I'll be
really
doing
good.
this weekend. I'll be
All
watching Hacks, and I'll be cursing your name because I'll see the
Stop
episode
it.
you told me about. I'll be watching Dutton
there's
Ranch,
other stuff that
and I'll be getting ready for our Monday M&M podcast, M&M
There we
Extra.
go.
Have a great weekend, my friend.
Take care, everybody. See you soon.